Okay, today we're going to talk about some algebra review. First thing we're going to talk about is slope of a line. Most of you guys have done slope before, so this is just a little bit of review. But if you remember, slope of a line is calculated through rise over run. Rise is how far up and down we go. Run is how far horizontally we go. The slope of the line, we call it m a lot of times. So if you see m, don't be surprised, that means slope. It passes through these points, x1, y1, x2, y2. And we want to make sure that we label them because it makes it easier for us to do. Our formula is this, y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1, and it's a fraction. Most of the time we'll leave it as a fraction unless it reduces down to a whole number. Since we're dealing with fractions, always reduce them down to the lowest possible fraction you can get. So let's look. I put the formula for slope up in the upper right hand corner. So let's try our first example. We have 3, 4, 9, 8. I would always recommend labeling each of the points. So 3 would be the x1, 4 would be the y1, 9 would be the x2, 8 would be the y2. So if I put it into the formula, I would get 8 minus 4, 9 minus 3. Always remember we're subtracting, no matter what. If I do so, 8 minus 4 is 4, 9 minus 3 is 6, that gives me 4 over 6, which reduces down to 2/3. Again, reduce all fractions. Our second example. Sometimes you have negatives that appear in it, so we have to make sure we know what to do when we see negatives. Again, x1 is negative 7, y1 is 3, x2 is negative 5, y2 is 10. Plugging that in, I get 10 minus 3, negative 5 minus a negative 7. Notice I put that negative 7 in parentheses. Because I got two negatives there, that makes a positive. So we want to make sure we're doing the correct subtraction or addition. 10 minus 3 is 7. Negative 5 plus 7 is 2. That gives me my fraction of slope of 7 over 2. Our next thing we're going to look at is distance formula. Distance formula is the distance between 2 points. So again, we're still using x1, y1, x2, y2. So this is going to help you if you label everything. This is the formula that you're going to use for it. It looks a little complicated, but once you get started with it, you should be okay. Notice it's the square root x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. Now, if we want to find the distance between 2 points, 1, 2 and 5, 9. If you notice the x2 minus x1, y2 minus y1, it's the same thing that we just kind of covered with slope. So it's going to be a little bit easier. Now remember, x1 is 1, y1 is 2, x2 is 5, y2 is 9. So we want to make sure to plug them in. So if I do so, I get 5 minus 1, 9 minus 2. Now, there will be occasions where when you subtract, you'll get a negative, but when you square it, it becomes a positive. So no matter what, anytime you get a negative inside the parentheses, when you square it, it becomes a positive. So if we do that, 5 minus 1 is 4, 9 minus 2 is 7. So if you look at that, I get down to 4 squared plus 7 squared. 4 squared is 16, 7 squared is 49. I add those two together. You should get 65. Last step is to take the square root. Once I do so, the square root of 65 to 2 decimal places is 8.06. So anytime you're doing the distance formula and you don't get a whole number, round it to 2 decimal places. That's what I'll be looking for. Now your assignment is this. So you need to find the slope and distance between these points of these 10 problems. Since it is an early out, it should be pretty easy to do. Make sure you reduce all fractions where they need to be. Make sure distance goes to 2 decimal places.